Rome built the greatest empire in history, and they did it with tricks so brutal that they are illegal today. Chemical weapons, psychological terror, and things that can send chills down your spine. The Romans did not just fight to win, they fought to make sure the enemy never recovered. Every empire has secrets. Rome had 7, and today we're about to unveil them all. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe, but only if you like this video and you want to see more of this. Let's get into it. The Roman gas chamber. Imagine you are a Roman soldier in 256 AD. You are underground. It is pitch black. The tunnel is so extremely narrow that you can't even stand. You are there to stop the Persian sappers digging beneath your city walls. Standard procedure. You have done it before. Then the tunnel opens up, and instead of Persians, you get a wall of black smoke. You are dead in minutes. This happened at Dura Europos in modern-day Syria. 19 Roman soldiers were found piled in an underground tunnel with no combat wounds, no sword marks, nothing. For decades, nobody could explain what killed them. Historians were genuinely baffled. A full group of trained soldiers, dead, underground, with no sign of a fight. Then archaeologist Simon James from the University of Leicester took another look at the site and finally figured it out. He found yellow sulfur crystals and bitumen residue right next to the bodies. The Persians had heard the Romans digging, so they set a trap. The moment the Roman tunnel broke through into theirs, they threw sulfur and bitumen onto a fire. The smoke shot straight into the Roman tunnel. Soldiers lost consciousness in seconds, dead in minutes. Here is what was actually happening inside their bodies. Sulfur dioxide mixed with the moisture in their lungs and converted into sulfurous acid. Their respiratory tracts were burning from the inside. There was no escaping it. The tunnel was too narrow to turn around fast enough. One Persian soldier also died right there. He probably waited too long to make sure the fire caught properly. Now here is where it gets really interesting. The Romans did not just become victims of this. They studied it. They adapted it. Roman military old writings had already mentioned using smoke and fire mixes in tunnel fights. What happened at Dura Europos was a brutal lesson, and they took notes. Now stop and think about what that really means. A small Persian group took out 19 Roman soldiers without swinging a sword once. No close fight, no real danger to themselves. Just basic chemistry and a tight tunnel. If you were defending a city under siege, that kind of move changed everything. You are outnumbered. You are trapped inside a city. Every soldier you lose matters. So finding a way to stop the enemy without losing your own men was not just clever. It was survival. The Romans understood that, and they started using the same logic in their own operations. Today, this is a war crime. The 1993 Chemical Weapons Convention bans exactly this kind of weapon. But in 256 AD, it was just brutal pragmatism. A desperate situation required a desperate solution, and it worked. But chemical warfare was not Rome's only weapon of fear. Sometimes the terror did not come from the enemy. It came from the man standing right next to you. Decimation. Your unit just ran from battle. You panicked. The line broke. Men died because of it. Now your commander lines up the entire unit. Every 10 men draw lots. 1 man per group draws the short straw, and then the other 9 beat him to death with clubs and stones. Not the enemy, his own brothers. That was decimation, and it is one of the most psychologically brutal survival tools Rome ever created. The word comes from the Latin decimation, which literally means removal of a tenth. The historian Polybius documented it in detail in his histories. It was a logical and deliberate process. The legion was split into groups of 10. Each group drew lots. The unlucky one died at the hands of his own comrades. No sword, no honor, just rocks and clubs. Here is what made this genius from a survival standpoint. Panic was the most sinister killer on an ancient battlefield. When a line broke, soldiers got cut down from behind while running. Holding the line was literally the difference between living and dying. Due to decimation, the soldiers fear their very own commanders more than their enemy, and that fear kept the line from breaking. But it went deeper than fear alone. Think about those 9 men who survived. They just killed one of their own, together. That kind of fear unites people to each other and to Rome in a way no speech ever could. They were no longer just soldiers. They were complicit, and walking away from the army was no longer an option. Julius Caesar used it sparingly. Later emperors like Augustus moved away from it entirely. Philosophers like Seneca openly criticized it as going too far. In the end, Rome saw it was hurting morale more than helping. Today it would count as just a summary execution and cruel treatment under the Geneva Conventions. And now it is fully banned under modern military law. But in the Roman world, it was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was not random cruelty. It was a cold system built to keep soldiers standing in battle by making retreat feel worse than the enemy ahead. Rome did not just build armies. It engineered the minds inside them. And if decimation shows you how Rome controlled its soldiers, the next tactic shows you how Rome accidentally poisoned its own empire. 1 cup of wine at a time. Sapa, the sweetener that slowly killed them. Winters were brutal. Military campaigns ran for months. Supply lines were unreliable at best and non-existent at worst. Food had to last, and wine could not turn to vinegar on the road. So Roman cooks started experimenting. They boiled grape juice down in lead pots until it became a thick, sweet syrup. They called it Sapa. It worked brilliantly. Sapa preserved fruit for years. It sweetened sour wine. It showed up in nearly 1/5 of all the recipes in the Roman cookbook of Apicius. It was everywhere. Soldiers used it. Aristocrats used it. Emperors used it. The Roman kitchen basically ran on it, and it was slowly poisoning all of them. Here is what was actually happening inside those pots. Boil acidic grape juice in a lead pot, and something interesting happens. The acid pulls lead acetate right off the walls. Lead acetate has a sweet taste, a genuinely pleasant one. So every batch made in a lead pot came out sweeter than the last. Cooks had no explanation for it. They just kept using lead pots because the results were better. Those pots were pumping out lead at levels that would shock any modern health regulator. We are talking about 200 times above safe limits, and this was not an occasional treat. Just 1 teaspoon of that syrup could slowly start long-term lead poisoning. And Roman aristocrats were not using 1 teaspoon occasionally. They were consuming wine sweetened with Sapa every single day. The average elite Roman drank close to 2 liters of wine daily, all of it laced with this stuff. The symptoms did not hit all at once. That was the trap. Lead poisoning creeps in slowly. Fatigue first, then joint pain, then cognitive decline, then infertility. Gout was so common among Roman nobility that historians used to call it the disease of emperors. Modern researchers now point directly at Sapa as a leading cause. Julius Caesar had 1 child his whole life. Augustus never fathered any. Several emperors deteriorated mentally in ways that stumped historians for centuries. Then scientists tested Roman bones, and the lead concentrations they found told the whole story. And the chemistry backs it up. Here is the part that stings. Vitruvius actually warned about this. He wrote clearly in De Architectura that lead pipes made water dangerous and that clay should be used instead. He connected lead to illness in writing. The warning was there. Nobody took it seriously enough to change anything because Sapa was too useful and too delicious to give up. Today, lead is not just restricted in food production. It is completely banned by the FDA and EFSA. No exceptions. Rome solved the food preservation problem. They just did not notice the solution was quietly dismantling them from the inside. Self-immunization. Mithridates VI was the king of Pontus and one of Rome's most dangerous enemies. His father was killed by poison. He was just a boy when it happened. And from that moment he decided he was never going to die the same way. So he started drinking it. Not in lethal amounts. Small doses. Every single day. A little arsenic here. Some snake venom there. Toxic plant extracts mixed with honey. He kept notes. He adjusted the amounts. He tested things on prisoners first, then on himself. For years he did this until his body simply stopped responding to doses that would have killed anyone else around him. When Pompey finally defeated him and Mithridates tried to end his own life with poison, it did not work. His own daughters took the dose and died immediately. He walked around trying to speed up the effect and felt nothing. He had become so immune that he could not even kill himself. His bodyguard had to finish the job with a sword. That is the story, and it is one of the most fascinating survival stories to come out of the ancient world. Now here is why the Romans cared so much about this. The Roman court was a genuinely dangerous place. Poison was the political weapon of choice. Emperors poisoned rivals. Rivals poisoned emperors. Nero's physician Andromachus actually took Mithridates' original formula and improved it. The Romans called it theriac. It contained over 50 ingredients: honey, viper flesh, plant extracts, minerals. It became the most sought-after antidote in the empire and stayed in use all the way through the Middle Ages. The concept behind it actually holds up to a point. Take snake venom as an example. Your immune system takes it as a threat and builds a response against it. When you regularly expose yourself to small amounts, that response gets stronger over time. Modern antivenom was literally developed on this exact principle. But the thing is that it stops working after a certain category of poison. Your body has a zero-tolerance mechanism against metals like lead or mercury. They just pile up in your tissues quietly. And with any toxic substance, the gap between a dose that trains you and a dose that kills you is dangerously small. One bad calculation and there is no coming back from it. Modern medicine classifies this as self-harm and non-medical ingestion of toxic substances, completely off-limits without clinical supervision. But in a world where your dinner guest might be trying to kill you, it was the most logical survival trick imaginable. Mithridates did not just fear poison, he studied it, understood it, and made himself into the antidote. Rome took notes, and the knowledge outlived both of them. Gladiator Blood, Rome's most disturbing medicine. Epilepsy in ancient Rome was not just a medical condition, it was a death sentence to your social life. Romans called it the falling sickness and had absolutely no idea of its reason. No neuroscience, no brain scans, nothing. So they did what desperate people do. They got creative. And by creative, I mean they started drinking human blood. Not just symbolically. In fact, literally. When a gladiator went down in the arena, people rushed forward with cups. The idea was simple. Gladiators were the peak physical specimen of Roman society. They trained their whole lives. They were strong, fast, and fearless. So their blood had to carry something powerful inside it. Drink it warm straight from the wound, and maybe some of that transfers to you. Pliny the Elder documented it, and even he seemed disturbed by it. He wrote about people with epilepsy drinking gladiator blood like it was some kind of life potion, and said they believed it worked best if it was taken straight from a fresh wound. The physician Celsus recorded it too, describing it as a miserable cure made tolerable only by an affliction even more miserable. And it did not stop at blood. Roman doctors prescribed gladiator liver as well. Scribonius Largus wrote about spectators stepping forward to tear pieces of liver from a fallen gladiator still lying in the dust. 8 separate medical authors between the 1st and 6th century documented this practice. This was not fringe thinking. This was mainstream Roman medicine. When gladiatorial combat was finally banned around 400 AD, the practice just shifted. Freshly executed criminals became the new source. People attended public executions cup in hand. In Denmark, oral histories describe crowds waiting at the scaffold ready to collect blood as it hit the ground. English physicians were still prescribing warm human blood as late as 1747. The logic behind all of it was sympathetic magic. A gladiator dies convulsing, which looks similar to a seizure. His blood must therefore be the cure. It sounds absurd now, but with zero understanding of brain chemistry, it was the most rational conclusion available to them. Today, this falls under laws protecting human remains, biohazard regulations, and basic medical ethics. completely off limits in every part of the world. But for Romans, it was survival logic. You had a condition nobody could explain and nothing could treat. And there was a warm body right in front of you. Rome never wasted a resource. The Corvus. Rome's genius invention that almost sank them. Rome had no navy. Carthage had the best one in the Mediterranean. And somehow Rome decided to go to war at sea anyway. It was 264 BC, and the First Punic War had just started. Rome dominated on land, but Carthage controlled every major water route around Sicily. If Rome wanted to win this war, it needed ships. So they built 120 of them in 60 days, using a wrecked Carthaginian vessel as a blueprint. That is already insane. But the ships were the easy part. The problem was that Roman soldiers had never fought at sea in their lives. So they cheated. They invented the Corvus. It was a wooden boarding bridge about 11 meters long, raised on the front of a Roman warship. It had a heavy iron spike on the underside shaped like a beak. When an enemy ship got close enough, a Roman crew would drop the bridge. The spike crashed through the enemy deck and locked both ships together. And then Roman legionaries stormed across. Suddenly, a sea battle was a land battle, and land battles were what Rome was built for. At the Battle of Mylae in 260 BC, the Carthaginians sailed out to meet Rome completely confident. They had faster ships, better sailors, more experience. The Corvus confused them immediately. The first 30 Carthaginian ships that engaged were boarded and captured on the spot. Rome won its first ever naval battle against the best maritime force in the world. It was one of the most creative military solutions in ancient history. Turn your weakness into irrelevance by removing the conditions that created it. But here is where it goes wrong. The Corvus weighed close to a ton. Mounted on the front of a ship, it made the whole vessel dangerously top-heavy. In calm water, it was fine. In a storm, it was a death sentence. 255 BC. A storm hit the Roman fleet on its way back from North Africa. Ship after ship went under. The Corvus, sitting on the bow, pulled each vessel forward and flipped it. Rome lost 384 ships in one night. The sea killed far more Romans than Carthage ever did. Nobody officially retired the Corvus. It just stopped showing up. Rome eventually figured out that brute mechanical force was not a substitute for actually knowing how to sail. They spent the next decade learning the water properly and eventually ended the whole war at the Battle of Agates in 241 BC. No Corvus in sight, just better sailors. And that lesson carried over into the final tactic. Because when Rome finally turned its full attention back to Carthage, it did not look for a shortcut. It went for something far more total. Rome's most total destruction. You have heard the story. Rome defeated Carthage, burned it to the ground, then salted the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. Half of that is true. The other half is something a German historian made up in 1863. Let's start from the beginning. Rome and Carthage had been at war 3 separate times over more than a century. Hannibal had marched his army over the Alps and nearly destroyed Rome from the inside. Romans grew up with that trauma. By the time the Third Punic War started in 149 BC, the Roman Senate had one goal: not defeat, not surrender, complete and permanent erasure. Cato the Elder stood up in the Senate and ended every single speech he gave with the same line regardless of the topic: Carthage must be destroyed. He said it so many times it became a running joke. Then it became policy. Scipio Aemilianus took command in 147 BC, and within a year he had Carthage completely cut off. No food in, no people out. The city was held street by street. Women cut off their own hair to make rope for catapults. It took 6 brutal days of house-to-house combat before resistance finally collapsed. 50,000 survivors were sold into slavery. The city was pulled apart stone by stone and burned. The fire ran for 17 days. Now about the salt. Every ancient historian who was actually there, including Polybius, who personally accompanied Scipio, wrote about the destruction in detail. Not one of them mentioned salt. The salting story first appeared in the writings of a 19th century German medievalist named Ferdinand Gregorovius and got picked up from there. Rome was actually too pragmatic for that. Salt was expensive and they planned to farm that land. Julius Caesar founded a colony on the exact same site a century later. What Rome actually did was just as devastating. They cursed the land, declared it officially dead territory, banned anyone from settling there, then watched it sit empty for 100 years as a warning to everyone else watching. That psychological dimension was the real genius. You did not just destroy Carthage, you made an example that echoed across the entire Mediterranean for generations. Today, the 1977 Geneva Convention protocols ban exactly this approach. Destroying crops, water sources, and civilian infrastructure is a war crime regardless of military justification. Rome did not care about any of that. Survival of the state was the only law that mattered. 7 tactics, 7 proof points that Rome did not just conquer the world. It outthought it, outfeared it, and outlasted it. From underground gas traps to psychological execution, to a sweetener that quietly dismantled an empire from within, every single one of these methods tells you the same thing. Rome was willing to go further than anyone else. And that willingness is exactly what made it unstoppable. So here is the question I want to leave you with. If you had to pick one of these tactics as the most ruthless, which one would it be? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.